Some must-see Philadelphia Eagles news and rumors are coming your way going into the NFL Combine, which officially gets underway on Tuesday, February 24th. And Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman, going to speak at 2:45 p.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. I'll have both of those interviews up on Philadelphia Eagles now, which is why you got to hit that subscribe button, because I have you covered with elite, top-notch, daily, year-round coverage of the Philadelphia Eagles right here on the channel. So coming up on this edition of the program, second video today, the Eagles make another move to their coaching staff. A potential Eagles free agent target on offense no longer available. Eagles fans are getting what they wanted and what they asked for. And what are the Eagles going to do in the upcoming NFL draft at the end of April, as this week is going to be spent meeting with a lot of prospects and scouting them? It's all coming up right now. Let's go. Here we go. I'm Chase Sr. Welcome into Philadelphia Eagles Now. And going into the NFL Combine, the Eagles haven't announced yet what their official coaching staff is going to be. And on offense, it's been a little bit of a transitional offseason, right? Kevin Patullo out. He's now the pass game coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. Sean Mannion in as offensive coordinator. Even sneakily on the defensive side of the ball under Vic Fangio, as we've talked about here on the show, there have been some changes to the defensive coaching staff on the fringes, right? Now, we don't know what the official coaching staff is going to be for 2026. We do know there have been a lot of changes to it. And this is a little bit surprising. For instance, the Los Angeles Rams, prior to the start of the NFL Combine, just tweeted out what their official coaching staff under Sean McVay is going to be in 2026. For Philadelphia, they have not done that. And how about this, by the way? Former Eagles offensive coordinator Brian Johnson heading to the Los Angeles Rams. And this has been an offseason of changes too for Los Angeles as they look to vie for a Super Bowl in 2026. Cliff Kingsbury was hired to that staff under Sean McVay to be their assistant head coach. Nathan Shieldhouse is being promoted to offensive coordinator. He's a young rising star in the coaching industry. And the same can be said for a guy in Sean Mannion, who's going to be Philadelphia's offensive coordinator in 2026. Recently was playing as early as 2023. Only 2 years of coaching experience. He's never called plays before, but he had to have wowed the Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, in the interview process for the Eagles to completely change their offensive philosophy in a way and change what they're going to do schematically going into 2026. And so he's going to be Philadelphia's new offensive coordinator. Chris Cooper comes over from the Vikings to replace Jeff Stoutland to be Philadelphia's offensive line coach. Big shoes to fill right there. The Eagles pass game coordinator going to be former Buccaneers offensive coordinator from last year in Josh Grizzard. He's learned under Mike McDaniel. I like that hire right there. Philadelphia's quarterbacks coach, Parks Frazier, who the Eagles hired around this time last year going into the Combine. Philadelphia likes him as a young and up-and-coming offensive mind. Run game coordinator, tight ends coach, Ryan Mahaffey, who follows Sean Mannion as he coached under Matt LaFleur. Now will coach under Mannion and Nick Sirianni to coach up the Eagles tight ends, but also coordinate the running game. Familiarity with the Matt LaFleur scheme, obviously important there. The Eagles running backs coach and assistant head coach is going to be Jamal Singleton. He's been with the staff over the last few years and has done some really nice things under Sirianni, helping to coach up and develop running backs who have gone on to have career years in the city of brotherly love. Wide receivers coach will be Aaron Moorhead, who a lot of Eagles fans have kind of soured on. I actually think he's done a pretty solid job as the Eagles wide receivers coach under Sirianni and in the final year under Doug Peterson. As for the Eagles making another change to their coaching staff, the latest news today is that the Eagles are promoting offensive quality control coach Montgomery Van Gorder to assistant quarterbacks coach, according to Matt Zenitz of CBS Sports, who's broken a lot of Eagles-related news this offseason, so credit to him. Van Gorder only joined the Eagles last year after notably working with Carson Beck, a potential day 2 or day 3 pick in the 2026 NFL draft. Could he be a developmental quarterback prospect for Philadelphia to enroll in the Eagles quarterback factory in the 2026 draft? And then Van Gorder also worked with Stetson Bennett at Georgia while the Bulldogs won back-to-back national championships. And I've never been a big Carson Beck guy. He, of course, hurt his elbow in the 2024 season, but he was a winner at Georgia. did some nice things while at Georgia. At times in pre-draft evaluations, looking ahead to mock drafts, some people had him as a guy who could go in the first 3 rounds of the draft. He goes to Miami this year, and I thought he played really well and silenced some haters and helping to lead Miami to the national championship, where they eventually lost to Fernando Mendoza and Indiana. Stetson Bennett is a guy who I think exceeded everybody's expectations with what he did at the college level. And so Van Gorder, in a way, has done a really good job of developing, coaching up the likes of Beck and Bennett. And I think for Philadelphia, for any organization across the NFL, you want to invest in young coaches who you think makes your coaching staff better, who can be a part of the overall collective of making your football team better. And Van Gorder, in the eyes of Philadelphia, is the guy who could potentially do that. Prior to coaching, he was a depth quarterback at Notre Dame for multiple years before transferring and starting for Youngstown State in 2018. Does this lead to the Eagles drafting the likes of Carson Beck as a developmental quarterback to be QB3 behind Jalen Hurts and Tanner McKee? It's never a bad idea to invest in the quarterback position. I want to transition from that to this. For the last couple of years, what have Eagles fans been asking for? Eagles fans have been clamoring for Philadelphia to usher in a new offensive era of football, to alter and make changes to the scheme, to make some offensive adjustments, to have more pre-snap motion, to have a more diverse route tree, run less hitch routes, have more creativity on the offensive side of the ball. This offseason has marked that. And I think the Eagles have listened to the rest of the NFL. They've examined what the rest of the NFL is doing. And Philadelphia realized, okay, we've had success with this Nick Sirianni and Frank Reich offense, but we do have to adapt and evolve with where the league is going, where we want to go. And I think in the long run, this is going to benefit the Eagles one way or another. If Sean Mannion works out, that's great. If he doesn't work out, the Eagles are experimenting with something on offense that I think is a positive by trying to be more modern day with their offensive concepts. And what did you notice last year? What did you notice in 2023? That when the Eagles weren't playing well on offense, fans, of course, were visibly frustrated, but players were visibly frustrated. And I think to just make some changes, it's refreshing to some of the Eagles star players on the offensive side of the ball because they realized that maybe the league caught up to what they were doing on offense, or they realized it's beneficial for us as offensive football continues to evolve and change to also adapt, evolve, and change. And I think the Eagles, especially their players, are excited to pivot to this new scheme, which is going to be a blend of ingredients from Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, and Sean McVay. And I say all of that because you think about what some of the Eagles players have said. There was the chatter from the Pro Bowl in the lead up to Super Bowl 60 that Jalen Hurts was in a really good state of mind, the most positive that he has been in a little while, very optimistic about the future. What did A.J. Brown say on that podcast with Micah Parsons? He can't wait and is looking forward to some of the changes that Philadelphia is making on offense by hiring all these new coaches. And then there was Saquon Barkley the other day, who was on the NFL Network, who said about this new offense, I'm super excited about it. I'm going on year 9, which is crazy to say. And I've had a lot of different coaches and head coaches and been a part of a lot of systems. I don't think I really came across a system like this. For me, it's refreshing. You get something new. You get to learn something new. And what did I mention just moments ago? Like for me in my broadcasting career, I've been able to go from Temple University, move out to Springfield, Illinois, go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, come here to chat sports. I went from covering high school and local colleges to covering Penn State football and some Major League Baseball, some minor league baseball, some minor league hockey, to now doing something that I dreamed of doing since I was 5 years old and covering the NFL, having a massive platform in doing so, building my brand and reaching millions and millions of people every single month, talking about an Eagles team that I grew up watching, idolizing, and being a big fan of. But with my content style, I continue as well to make the necessary adjustments, to adapt and evolve, because this is an ever-changing media landscape that I'm in. But I also want to keep things fresh and new for me, because I never want to just give people the same old content and talking points over and over and over again to the point where it becomes boring. And I also don't want to become bored as a content creator. And in football, right, what the Eagles have been doing has certainly worked. It resulted in 2 trips to the Super Bowl and a Lombardi trophy. But if you blend some of what they've done and done very well at a very high level with some of these newer offensive concepts where you see the flavors of this offensive system all across the NFL, and it works out with one of the most talented offensive units in the NFL, imagine what Philadelphia might be able to accomplish. And Saquon went on to emphasize the competitive side of changing the offense. As a competitor, you love it. You love the challenge of putting yourself in new systems and doing the things that you do really well, and also things that you need to improve on. And they're going to challenge us to do so. And I feel like if we are able to have that mindset as an offense and buy into that, I think the sky's the limit. And this just came to me, right? You think about some of these veteran players in professional sports who are with one team and then they get traded to another team at the NFL trade deadline and they're re-energized. They have that breath of fresh air. They're working with some adrenaline. It causes them to lock in. It causes them to focus. It allows them to take their game to the next level because it's something new, which requires a different mindset and a level of focus. And hopefully that is what we see with this Eagles offense in 2026. And again, hopefully it can benefit Philadelphia for the years to come, which I think it can, because they needed to make some of these necessary changes on the offensive side of the football. All right. Today's Philadelphia Eagles Now, made possible thanks to our friends at PrizePicks. Shoot your shot on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. PrizePicks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. PrizePicks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. Join the millions of users. Sign up today. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. On PrizePicks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play, no matter your play. PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, a couple more things that I want to get to here. Looks like the Atlanta Falcons are going to place the franchise tag on Kyle Pitts. What's the future of Eagles tight end Dallas Goedert? We really don't know. Is he going to continue his career with Philadelphia? The Eagles are the only organization that he's known, and he's been one of the top tight ends for Philadelphia since they drafted him in the second round all the way back in 2018. If the Eagles wanted to make a change and get faster, more dynamic, twitchier, and leaner at the tight end spot, could they have gone the direction of Kyle Pitts, who grew up in the Philadelphia area, who the Eagles have shown some light interest in before via the trade market? Well, with Atlanta putting the franchise tag on Kyle Pitts, if they end up doing that, it's not going to allow Pitts to hit free agency. Now, it could make Kyle Pitts a trade target, but with Kevin Stefanski going to Atlanta to be their new head coach to take over for Raheem Morris, and Kyle Pitts coming off a year in which he was a second-team All-Pro and is only 25 years old, and when engaged, when displaying a full effort, is one of the more gifted athletes and tight ends in football. Does it make sense to let a player like that go? I like this move if I'm Atlanta, because I think that Kyle Pitts is a really solid player. Now, a couple things that you could do. Yes, you could trade him, get some value back. You earn some leverage in that way. You give Kyle Pitts the franchise tag. You pay him a lot of money for 2026, of course. No long-term security beyond that. They could put the franchise tag on Kyle Pitts and still work out a contract extension. I think Atlanta is doing this knowing that they've got some flexibility with what route to go. And if they get blown away by a trade offer, they could potentially trade Kyle Pitts as well. When he was coming out of the draft in Florida, I loved him. Now, his career has been a little bit up and down, and I don't think that he has reached the expectations that a lot of people had on him, including me, when he was a tight end drafted 4th overall in the 2021 NFL draft. But he is a player who is drafted 4th for a reason, because when you watch him at 6'6", 250, a guy who can run in the 4.4s, he's different. And that's why his nickname is literally the unicorn. This past year, 88 catches, 928 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So Kyle Pitts not available to the Eagles in free agency. Speaking of the draft, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, what do the Eagles do in the 2026 NFL draft? They'll be, of course, scouting prospects here in Indianapolis all throughout the week. The Eagles have their 1st-round pick, 23rd overall. It's their own. They have their own 2nd-round pick, 54th overall. They have a 3rd-round pick from the Jets at 68, a projected compensatory pick in the 3rd round, their own 4th-round pick, a projected comp pick in the 4th as well. They have a 5th from the Atlanta Falcons, and then a comp pick projected in the 5th round as well. So that's 8 picks, all inside the first 5 rounds. And I think back to what Howie said after the year, that the Eagles have spent a lot of money on offense. They've drafted and developed on defense. That philosophy could change just naturally, because now you've got some of these defensive players up for contract extensions, and the offense is starting to get older and expensive. Now you got to replenish the cupboard on offense and extend some of your homegrown players on defense. Wouldn't be surprised if that's how we see this offseason play out for Philadelphia here. All right, Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman speaking tomorrow. Be on the lookout for that. Hit that subscribe button for nonstop Eagles coverage right here on the show, and I will catch you all tomorrow from Radio Row in downtown Indianapolis, the site of the 2026 NFL Combine. Go Birds.